All right. All right, looks like we're good. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Follett House Friday. I missed you all last week. We were closed, so we didn't get to do a live video, but I hope you all enjoyed the one that we did put up with continental currency. It was really interesting. Going back to our theme of trying to stick with our summer reading theme, I was looking through our collection, looking at books, see if there was something that would fit pretty well, and I found something I thought was really cool, and everyone else I talked about thought it was really cool. So let me put my gloves on here. So we use gloves with older materials to protect them from the oils in our hands, which can help them basically to keep the oils will destabilize the material, corrode it faster, make it go bad faster. So we do have to protect it. So I'll get my gloves on here. So this week, the thing I found was a collection of it's called Andersen's Fairy Tales, and by the title you can guess it is a collection of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales that he wrote. Some of you are familiar, of course, with him. He wrote several different fairy tales that we're familiar with, some of which have become Disney movies over the years, so we're all very familiar with them. So this particular volume was published in Chicago, right? Yep. By W.B. Courtney and Company. And this company published this collection of fairy tales for a long time. Anywhere between 1880 was the first year they put it out, and the last volume came out from them in 1925. So they were putting this out for 45 years. Just by looking at it, my original guess was kind of early 1900s-ish. But then one of my coworkers pointed out something that I completely missed, that on the front page, written in pencil, you have a name in there. It doesn't show up real well on here. It says Edna Ritz, and on the bottom it says Christmas 1902. So that at least gives us an idea of when this book was bought and when it would have been given to someone. And I would assume Edna Ritz is who the person the book was given to. So that it's always helpful when we do find artifacts like this that have some have patent years on them, some have been in the family a long time. They know when they entered the family, or some are that we get like this that have inscriptions in them. This book doesn't have a copyright year in it, which was very frustrating. That's why I kind of only had to guess until someone pointed out the handwritten inscription, and that gave us a better idea of what year it was. So a couple of things that's interesting is this book starts with a biography of Hans Christian Andersen, talking about when he was born in Denmark, his education, his whole life. He died towards the end of the 1800s and all of that. And what I think is really interesting about this book are the illustrations, the pictures that they have in them, because they're really nice. So I'll show you, I kind of bookmarked a few that I wanted to show off. Here's one of Hans Christian Andersen himself that they have in, which I thought was very pretty and done very well. There's another one here from a story that you probably recognize. This is the illustration that they used to go with the story of the Ugly Duckling. So you can see there's several birds flying away, ducks, and a fox in the grass. And then what I found interesting is, so fairy tales are normally kids' books. They're given to children. And this book is in really good condition. It doesn't really look like it was used real hard, but as I was going through and looking at it, and I'll show you two different examples where one of the kids was coloring in the book and coloring in the illustrations. And I know I did this on some of my books when I was younger. My parents still have them. And I think it's really cool that we can see that they were using colored pencils to color in all these illustrations. Here's another one that I found that is really interesting. And you can kind of see the red for the boat and the blue for the water. It's really cool. What I also found interesting about this book is when you go through it, there's a lot of most of the fairy tales I don't really recognize. Maybe some of that is that I don't know enough fairy tales. There's some that I did recognize. Thumbelina is in here. The Ugly Duckling is in here. I heard of The Emperor's New Clothes before. Those are all ones I've heard before. But there's a bunch in here. I'll just pick a couple that I had never heard of. Here's one called The Little Girl and the Chickens. Another one called The Drop of Water. Another one called The Brave Tin Soldiers. There's another one that I thought was kind of funny called The Conceited Apple Branch. I don't know how an apple branch can be conceited, but apparently it was. So it's really interesting. They see, a lot of the fairy tales that we associate with him, like The Little Mermaid and things like that, aren't in this collection, unless they're in under other names, which is very possible. That's not, like I said, I'm not very familiar with the history of fairy tales and everything else that I could go on and write, 10-page paper on it. So it could be in here just under other names, but it's really fascinating that they have this large collection of fairy tales, which even some of the people I mentioned to who know more than I do had never heard of them before. So I thought this was a really neat find. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. Or, as always, I'll also be watching the comments throughout the week. So if you guys have any questions, I will be happy to answer them then. The book, like I said, is in really good condition. The pages, as far as I can see, aren't torn. The cover, I showed you the front, the edges are a little worn and knocked, but the book's 118 years old. It's doing almost 118 years old. It's doing pretty good. Back cover as well, pretty good condition. The pages aren't falling out. So it kind of gives it it's interesting that for a children's plaything, it's in really good condition. That's one of the things we see with children's toys. They're not always in the best shape because when the kids get them, kids play with them. They do what kids do with toys. In 100 years, it's going to be probably hard to find a Tickle Me Elmo that's in perfect condition because they were played with when kids were younger. And you get the same thing with historic artifacts. It doesn't look like we're getting any questions, unless I missed any, but I think I haven't. So please join us next week for another Follett House Friday, same time, noon on our Facebook page. And I'll be finding another artifact from our collection to talk about and tie it in with summer reading. Hope you all have a good weekend. And as I said, you can always ask questions throughout the week if you think of any, and I'll be happy to respond to them. And everyone stay cool.